back to another episode of Faces of Our Cities. I'm your host, Jesse. We're back talking with Kellen Casebeer. He was one of the first episodes that I ever recorded. All you have to know really is that Kellen is one of these child geniuses, but Kellen puts weightlifting and jiu-jitsu stuff up on his LinkedIn, and it's like, where's the nerd? If this guy's such a genius, where's the nerd? But you do nerd out, I think, at certain times. And either way, all of your content that you post is so wonderful. And I'm just so excited to finally reunite. It's been 2 years since we actually talked. And I'm really excited to hear how things are going. Break it down for us. How have the last 2 years been since we last recorded an episode?
Yeah, so last 2 years, I'm trying to remember exactly where that would have placed me on this journey, but I was doing the W-2 sales guy thing for a while. I think I may have been there. I did like SDR, I did AE, I did like sort of like head of sales in this early stage company. I think since then what I did is left that. I went and worked as like a consultant for a while, right? And so I spent about a year where I was building outbound sales teams for other companies, right? So I worked for a consulting company. I was sort of like this lead consultant guy. I would sell deals to founder clients where I would then be like the lead consultant fulfilling basically fractional head of sales, right? And so I took sort of my skill set I'd learned in my career and then went, how do I like apply this to sort of like a multitude of companies, right? And get a big breadth of experience like super quickly so I could kind of validate myself. So I did that for a while. I like built 22 outbound sales teams from the ground up where it had been like founder based primarily. And we like hired people, built tech stacks, implemented processes, did that. We saw some great wins. We saw some tough times, learned a lot. Then I basically saw sort of a point in that whole process that was what I perceived to be a little bit of like a make or break that we can get into later. But I basically built a business purely out of doing that, right? And so I went, hey, like there's a flaw in the model that I'm delivering right now. I think I can do it in a better way for less expensive, quicker. Saw the opportunity and I basically jumped ship, right? So that's been professionally. I also had a kid, right? So I have like a 16-month-old son. So I become a father. So that's been like a big, life thing. I've been on the journey of a guy who like left W-2 employment abruptly after having a son to start a business. And so probably anything, a bootstrap business, right? Like no funding. Like it's like day one, like, hey, we have no money. At the end of the month, we got mortgage. Like, let's figure this out. And it's gone pretty decently so far, and I'm definitely having fun. So yeah, that's how it's been.
I can't wait to dig into that a little bit deeper around taking that leap and what it took to do that. Can we jump into what that company is? Is that CliAcquire?
Yeah. I technically started this business about 8 months ago. Helping founders build outbound sales teams is sort of like my jam, or like building outbound sales programs really. So previously I was doing it as a consultant. I decided to do it as a service instead. And so CliAcquire, CliAcquire, basically is where the name came from, but like we're changing the name because no one gets it right. So it's not a problem. But yeah, that's been, the last 8 months is basically this new business. And that's sort of my first real time though, building a business that isn't like kind of Kellen the guy making some money, getting paid by people and being like, I'm going to build a business. It's like a model that isn't like Kellen the person, but it's like this company is a thing.
Sure. That's exciting. Are you guys just still fairly small where you're pretty much involved in everything?
So it's me, Barrett, and Jed, right? And so it's us, but the unique thing, part of why I worked in that consulting company was to bridge the gap between having a set of skills and being a business that applies that set of skills in like a repeatable process. And a big part of that is learning not sort of the geeked out sales guy thing that's like me, but actually like all of these new skill sets, right? In a really major piece of that is sort of this concept of not being reliant on individual excellence, right? And so what that means is like if I have a process in my business that only works because Kellen Casebeer was doing it and it required my excellence to make it successful, that's a failed process because if I hire into that, it's not going to work. So the effort of sort of building things as a scalable process that others could fulfill is like a monumentally different thing than just delivering what we do. And so like we have built since day one through the lens of everything we do needs to be able to be done through not us. Like we have to be able to hire people to be able to do these things. And so it's really stretched me. Like I've grown a ton from being, it's probably even maybe apparent, I would guess, in like this podcast versus the last time. my mental models for my knowledge was just like, it's kind of like that pinboard Charlie thing from It's Always Sunny, right? And like that was me being like, sales. And now I've had to be like, okay, if I have to gather my thoughts, if I have to sell this in a way that's tangible and makes sense, if I have to teach in a way that's tangible and makes sense, it's just really forced me to like solidify my own models. And, and I've just grown a lot through that, because you sort of gain this new perspective of like, how a business could feasibly operate through certain things, right? Like there's a difference between like what you could do and like what you could do if like the only constraint was like, how creative could we get? And then like, what can we operationalize through things, right? And so a lot of that. So all that to be said, it's been building out the processes. We have now started hiring into it, but the goal is essentially to do it in such a way that we're cash flow positive doing this, and that eventually we could like start, really pouring resources into it, like growth people into it, and that there'll just be like a thing for them to do versus like, hire, which is like kind of what we help someone not hire someone, then go, oh, great. Now we got to figure out how do we train this person? Like, how do we tell them what to do? I want to be able to be like, this is exactly what we're doing. Follow the steps. You're going to get these outcomes. We want you to get these outcomes. Just come do this. A lot of it as well is to like operationalize myself and my partner. There's this sort of dichotomy between these two ideas of making it non-reliant on us, but also knowing that like the more I'm involved in something, like it's going to go better right now, right? And so what that looks like is really carving out the moments in our delivery process for our business where a smart, able like sales strategy guy or outbound strategy guy can inject themselves, their thinking, their expertise to get the result. And we've just gotten really good at sort of having like such a granular process that I know exactly where in the process my brain goes to make a good result happen. And it's like a small fraction of the whole thing because we've like operationalized these workflows. You know what I mean? And so it's like, we're kind of like a factory of turning these outbound campaigns out, but we do it at like super high quality, super custom. Like, I tell people like it's the tech stack of my dreams, the process of my dreams, and we just plug other people's offers into it and get to like, make it hum.
I'm really sorry if I, along this path, missed what the company does, but just to make sure I understand what CliAcquire does. Ideally, a customer of yours would outsource their like need for sales to your team, and because you have a set process, pretty much anyone could plug and play into your sales team. And
so I'm going to give you a story behind how it came to be, and I think that makes it a lot more tangible because there's a few places I plug it in, right? So essentially, when I was doing the consulting thing, what we were selling was like a 6-month build you an outbound program project. They'd literally pay $120,000 up front, so $20,000 a month for us to come in, and we'd like build a tech stack, define a process, so kind of like their ICPs and their sales stages and like all the sort of strategic stuff. Month 3, we'd go hire someone, and then we'd have 4, 5, and 6 for me as a fractional head of sales in these companies to create positive ROI outcomes out of $120,000 investment, 3 months, right? And these were like relatively junior sales reps, right? And so what it meant was these business owners are spending a ton of money. Like this was it was a very stressful amount of money. Like they're not doing this because they kind of hope it works. They're doing it because it's like, you better make something happen, right? And so what I saw was that when we would get someone in, the thing we do is like, here's your market, here's your persona, this is what you're going to say, go do it, right? And what we had was like a theoretical market analysis of like what they should go do. But sometimes we'd like deploy this person and it would work and it would go great and they'd make money and blah, 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 and everyone was happy, right? Huge positive results. And it was like, this was awesome. And that was a great business, right? Selling big $120,000 projects with great results is like, everyone's happy, right? But sometimes it didn't. And when it didn't, the first big problem of this is you wouldn't know it wasn't working well until halfway through. So you'd literally be at least $60,000 in the hole before you even have like an inkling that like this thing isn't panning out well. I was constrained by 3 hours per week per client, essentially face to face, which was my ability to sort of influence the way things were going with them. So it was constrained by my time. And so what I saw was that there's this sort of asset that can exist of a repeatable process that produces results. If you have that asset, you can hire like your run-of-the-mill salesperson. You can, no offense to anyone, but just like you can go hire an average salesperson, you can plug them into that process and they will get those results generally. If you don't have any semblance of a result, if you spend $120,000 plus a head count, you may find out $80,000 later that like you don't have a very potent process and that there's a lot of experimentation that has to happen before you get there. So my business helped develop repeatable outbound sales processes for other businesses. What we do is by owning the tech stack and by doing it ourselves, we can offer it for a lot less per month, and I can get more impressions of higher quality, of more basically controlled inputs, so that one, I'll get better outputs and I have more control over what is driving those outputs. So I can more quickly speed through what works, what doesn't work for a client. We do like this big market analysis, like we're doing all of this market testing stuff, so that the output of our sort of process is an understanding of which personas within which markets that you serve are respondent to which like types of your messaging, right? So, and I'll give you an example for my own business because we get real granular. A market for us might be Series A startups without a sales leader whose founder has never been a salesperson. So that series of companies, there's a bunch of companies in that bucket. And then we take the founder persona specific to that bucket. That founder has a unique set of challenges by not having a sales leader and not having sales background themselves, that like we can speak to our value to way more uniquely than if I just took founders of Series A startups, which is like what most of our market out there, like most of the, sales teams are doing, right? And so essentially we just do this very controlled, very scientific method type outbound process where we go from all of the possibilities of what could theoretically work that you would normally hand to a rep. We just do all the market testing very quickly and zero in on what does work. Now we have this asset. Once we have the asset, we can teach it to a founder so they can do it. We can keep doing it, or we can build them a team to do it. But the point is we have the thing that we already know that works before we invest $120,000 in it. And we can do all of what I described literally. So we do the data, we do the validation, we do the inbox management for less than you could hire a single junior SDR. What I would see is all these people go, I need sales. I hire an SDR. I hire this person who's perfectly capable, but isn't a sales strategy person. 6 months later, I have no results. I fire them. They quit sales because they think they suck. I stop entertaining the idea of outbound because I think it doesn't work. And in reality, both of those people were perfectly fine. They just don't understand that like there's this middle piece that someone like me can come help develop, basically. And so it's a done for you outbound service, but through this sort of consulting lens to build you an understanding of message market fit. What messages does your market respond to, so that you can then either keep letting us do it or we can help teach you to do it.
I love that. I can definitely see the opportunity there for you guys, and the amount of money that gets spent throwing tech at the wall, throwing messaging at the wall. Some companies will hire more than one SDR, and they'll like just throw how many SDRs they can at it. And instead of firing one, they let 10 go because the exact same thing is happening. And you're like, wow, how much money are we burning through here?
I meet with those companies. Ideally, we come out ahead of hiring decisions, but there's time, like we've come in, we have clients that have huge teams, and it's like, hey, we have a huge team. It's not working really well. And they'll just deploy us to go try to figure things out. And then once we have it, we can help deploy that knowledge like throughout their organization, right? But I've met with people, I have a friend who's like a head of sales in a company. They have 12 full cycle AEs. These AEs spend about half of their time doing prospecting, right? So about 6 full-time employees worth of yearly salary goes into prospecting from this group of people. And they produce like very, 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 very little revenue of that time. They also have, the AEs are productive as an employee from a like cost to revenue produced perspective, but the hours they spend producing their own meetings is nearly useless. It's like almost wasted. And what I showed him is that if he, and I wasn't like advocating for like getting rid of anyone, but I was just showing that like, if you took the payroll that goes into those hours and you divided it by 10, you could hire me 3 times over every single month in the sort of output. I mean, I would outproduce the entire team each month on each one of those line items. It changes the way you can staff teams, right? Because we have clients where we will do all of the cold outreach. It's practically automated cold outbound email, hyper targeted, but like automated. We don't try to book meetings though. We just surface like replies and interest, and then their SDR teams cold call, warm call on, or shoot personalized videos for those people, right? So it can also kind of change like how the series of sort of like how prospects move through funnels, depending on how a company wants to sort of engage with someone like us. And some people we just teach because they have teams and they don't need us.
Have you worked outside of that industry in general, like outside of the tech industry? Could you do what you're doing anywhere?
Kind of. So the way I put it is this, is like, so there's like these economics of a campaign, right? Like we target about 1,000 validated live contacts per month, right? And they get about 4 messages, right? And so it's sort of like you have 4,000 impressions a month against audiences that we can control and define, right? So it's not like paid ads or sort of like this idea of an avatar. It's like, I can go pick these people, right? So it's like, they are the people, right? So it's sort of like you do a little bit more pre-qualification on who they are. you outreach to them. There's going to be some sort of conversion. It's all dependent on the economics of the offer. Like, what are you selling and how many of those do I need to get you each month for you to be worth doing this, right? But like, we have a client that he sells $100 monthly thing and direct to consumer to like marketing people. It's like a case study educational product, right? $100 a month. And like, we do great with them. You know what I mean? We have like manufacturing clients, right? We have like people selling to like contractor type people. We, big enterprise have booked with some like really, really big accounts. So yeah, it's a lot of breadth, because what I tell people is like Outbound is not about the industries so much as people. It's like I kind of hack people's attention and understand what people care about in a way to drive them to business outcomes, basically.
When does it not work? When is it not a good customer fit for you guys?
A big thing for me, like a really strong core value, is I'm like very, anti-snake oil salesman, right? And so like I'm never going to overpromise things, right? We have no guarantee. And I tell people we don't have a guarantee because I don't own what you do, who you think you do it for, and what you think they care about for it, right? Now, if they're right about those three things, we'll run a campaign, we'll get great results. So if they're super confident, so am I. The problem is, in my experience, what happens is you have an understanding of what you do. I run that campaign, it gets almost nothing. And then like 2 months later, I'm going to start crushing it and you're going to thank me, right? And so what I tell people is there's this sort of junction point on lead, like companies that will send cold emails for you, right? There's what I call a pass-through agency, which is sort of like you tell them what you do. They take that, turn it into a message. They take the people you say that to, and they say it to a bunch of them, and you're going to get what you get, right? My business is very much so built as sort of like a market research type offering as well, where we get really granular on the definition. We're really in the weeds on the messaging. Like it's very much so sort of like hyper controlled, running these experiments so that we can learn and sort of advance our knowledge of the business month over month, right? So it's not pass through, get what you get, you want the meetings. It's like I'm applying my knowledge, or the knowledge of this model sort of to a business, right? And so with that, we are not transactional. We are not short-term focused. If you need ROI month 2, like we're not the right fit, because I can't guarantee that. And if you need that, if it's not worth doing it unless you get that, you just shouldn't do it with me, because I would way rather not take the money and not disappoint people than like take the wrong money. So for me, it really is like you need to be going into it like this is a set of experiments with no understanding of exactly how it's going to go on the output. You value expertise behind running these experiments. You believe in the model and you're like, yes, I want to run this. And that you acknowledge that the outcome could be like not a positive outcome, but that would be valuable to you, because if we can conclusively say that, show you, how we arrived at that outcome, that like that would be useful. Right. And so examples of that's like founder who's like super busy and they're super profitable. It's like, hey, like you don't need to manage someone. You don't need to think about it. Give us some money. We'll run these experiments. We'll report back. We'll let you know how it's going. Right. High value. And so it really is about like, what I tell people is we're not going to do a worse job than anyone, but there's a lot of people out there that'll like have certain levels of like, we can do this. And sort of they'll, how they back into how they do it, or, approaching whether or not they reached it or whatever. That's just not a game I want to play. Like, we're flat fixed fee up front, right? So it's like, we don't do a performance model. It's like, you're paying us to run this service. We're aligned in making it like a really positive outcome, but like, that's what it is. And so really, I think it just comes down to that. Like what I see is like the people that are great clients for us sort of like the lens at which we look through this. And then the people that end up being like, that's not really a fit for me, are like, hey, that's cool. But like, there's people out there that'll set you up for less money than we charge in the first month, and that'll do pay per lead. And like, you can get into the game of like arguing over what's qualified or not and blah, blah, blah. It's just, that's not my game.
I'm going to go back to like one of the first things you said. You said you became a dad. Did you already have kids, or is that your first kid?
First.
That's the first kid. Wow. Congratulations. That's really exciting. I can imagine a lot of things were going through your brain, having a kid, leaving a W-2 gig, starting bootstrapping a thing.
Yep.
What things did you have to do to make that possible? To not be crippled by anxiety? And yeah.
It's like funny because it's almost the opposite of what you'd think, right? Which is this. Before we like decided to have my son, I had been sort of like treading this water between W-2 entrepreneurial stuff. I knew that I wanted to go towards like doing my own thing. And I was coming from sort of a comfortable W-2 environment. And like the lesson I've learned since then is basically I was acting cowardly, that like I knew what I wanted, but I wasn't going for it because I was attached to the comfort and to, the wages I was making and things like that. COVID had caused a bit of stagnation in my growth. And I realized essentially I had intent of what I was going to do. That was removed. And I filled it with stuff, but not the same level of intent. I had this feeling kind of in the back of my head of like, maybe I should be taking something more seriously on and like propelling myself. I realized that if I had a kid, I just knew like the stress that would provide me would be clarity, right? Like I didn't think it would cripple me in any way. I knew, like I confidently felt that like, I basically was like, dude, you're like coasting. Like you know, you don't care. Like you're comfortable, you're happy, you're chilling. And that's a good place to be. Like I'm, incredibly blessed. Like it's not like that's some bad thing, but I just knew that like the thing I really wanted was beyond that. And that was almost like the siren song keeping me back. Right. And so I was like, I'm going to have a kid. I'm going to do this thing, and it was kind of like off to the races. And I tell people the craziest thing about having a kid is how easy it makes prioritization. Instantaneously, like literally in a zero moment, like it's almost like you just immediately, like your sense of what you want to be doing, what you care about, what's important and what isn't, it becomes so easy to ignore what isn't. And so it became the opposite. Any bit of stressor for me, honestly, is like wind in my sails, because I'm doing the thing that I know I want to be doing. And this is what it feels like. And every bit of stress is the thing that other people might feel like, oh, I need to stop. And it's like, no, my ability to go through that is like what guarantees the future in my eyes. Right. And so that's sort of, welcome to my soapbox, but like that's been the journey of like kid entrepreneurship and sort of like actualization of myself, knowing like this is what I want. Like I basically was like, how could I regret doing these things that I know I want? So I'm just going to do it. And it's weird because like the things I was worried about were so not an issue, and the things I thought would be important didn't even matter, and like the things I grew from like were things I could have never even thought. The way that it's been is just, it's weird. Honestly, it's hard to tangibly talk about in some ways.
I want to make sure that we are all very clear. You will never convince me to have a kid with that argument, A. But I 100% understand how that could be such a motivating factor. And you're right, like it just makes prioritization so clear. And I think that when you have so many like goals and dreams, and you're right, when things become comfortable, it's really easy to ignore your dreams.
There's this dude on Twitter. He goes by Brute de Force. And like anyone who goes and listens to him, they're like, wow, this guy, like they might think he's like a jackass, because in plenty of ways he is. But he basically talks about like the idea of like losing it all. What you learn by losing it all is that like if you are who you think you are, like if you believe you can build this, it doesn't matter what you lose, you can always get back there. And so it means like the act of not moving forward is the act of not believing in yourself, because it's kind of saying like, what if it doesn't happen? And he's just saying like, and so I just realized like, I do believe in myself. And so I just knew like, I believe I can do this. And so it became like, there's no excuse not to just like go for it. Right. It's like literally about like being out there doing the thing that I know I need to be like working at.
Okay. I feel like we've already heard a lot of like great tidbits as per usual, but just to call them out, are there any cheat codes or life hacks that you want to offer up to people?
Yeah, so I have one. So it's funny, right? Because like to me, the best life lessons are the ones that come back to you, right? And you're like, and you feel it again and again, right? And one of the ones I've been returning to really hardcore lately is this concept of using friction itself, like the feeling of friction, stress, anxiety, whatever, as a diagnostic for strategy. And what it means is if something feels stressful or if it's difficult to do, inherently it is not the right way to do it for that individual in that moment. It's sort of like a lot of people approach work like, I need to do X, and it starts to feel hard, and they'll like sink lots of time, emotional stability, like all of these things into like trying to overcome their perception of the obstacle. And in a small business and a tiny business, it's sort of like the scope of what you need to get done is 100 times more than the amount of time you have. And so you need to get good at that prioritization thing. And so what it means is you sort of have to be able to move through things quickly. And if something is going to eat a lot of time, it's almost like inherently not the right thing to be doing, because you don't have that time to spend just sinking into like little tidbit things. You got to figure out more creative ways around it. So my lesson is like using friction as a measurement and rejecting it, where if you find yourself coming up against something that is too difficult, you need to have the faith in yourself that you can succeed, not head first, but like a different way. And so I'll give you some examples, right? Is take weight loss. If I meet someone and they're like, I'm trying to lose weight, and then they're like really having a hard time sticking to their diet, I will tell them to stop the diet immediately. Why? Because if they feel that much friction, you're creating negative associations with the path to success, because you're literally saying like, the act of achieving this is miserable and I hate it. And you're reinforcing that you don't want to do that anymore. And you're going to destroy your ability to be strong against it. So what you have to do is lower the friction cost towards success, even if it means slowing progress, lowering the bar of what success means, but building momentum towards that, because momentum is incredibly powerful, right? And so I tell people and I've coached a lot of people through like weight loss stuff before, right? And I always tell people, I can tell who's successful before they do the first thing, because I can tell how they engage with me, right? It's an identity thing where it's like, some people are like, I hate myself. I want to lose weight. I'm miserable. I'm like, good luck, right? I meet other people, they're unreconciled. It's like, I realize what I'm doing is terrible. I'm already me 2 years from now. I just need to put the process in place to get there. And when I meet those people, you can literally tell, you're like, oh my gosh, you're already changed, right? And they consistently win. And so in business, it's like, if you're trying to do something that's too difficult, I think you need to back up and look at it and be like, is the thing I'm trying to do even make sense, or does it now not make sense? Or is the way I'm accomplishing it not make sense? Do I need to loop in other people? Right? It's like, I might tell my partner like, hey, can you do XYZ? And if he goes and tries to do it and it starts taking 5 hours, like, our business can't afford him to spend 5 hours doing XYZ that I intended to take 20 minutes. Right? So if he starts running into the friction, come back, so anyways, it applies to self, it applies to others. The point being that, like, it's kind of like, think of a Ferrari, right? Like, you can't have a Ferrari that like continuously is like overheating and you're like, yeah, I let it overheat, but then I just don't drive it for a couple days. It's like, no, you can't do that. Like, this is a fine-tuned machine. You need to keep it fine-tuned or it's going to blow up. It doesn't matter that you're semi-tolerant of something that is like inherently not a thing. I don't know if that makes sense. It's a little like kind of woo-woo, I think. But I really do think like it's like you need your goals associated with things that are positive and feel good, or you're not going to accomplish them. And as soon as you're like putting misery between yourself and where you want to be, even if you accomplish it, you'll never stay there, ever, ever, ever. It needs to be something that you love more than the thing before.
I love that you are bringing this up, because I think the majority of the advice that you get about things that you don't want to do is make it be the first thing you do in the morning, right?
Yeah.
That's what everyone says. Oh, is that something on your list that you just haven't gotten to and you keep putting off because you don't want to do it? You just need to do it, and you need to do it first thing in the morning, like first thing you do at work, right? And this is saying, no, don't. Like, this is saying, well, look at why is it so hard to do it? Is there an easier way? Is there a way to make it less painful?
I even think the real question is, do you actually want to do it? Right? Because, like, as an example, take someone who wants to lose weight. I would say, so here's the flip side to the same idea, actually, is our behaviors tell us our truest desires, right? So if you want to lose weight, but you're not losing weight, I am telling you right now, straight up, you don't want it more than you want something else. You're engaging in the wrong concept. Yes, you want that. The real thing to hurdle with is your lack of ability to not indulge in certain things to a certain amount. And usually when you look at that, it's super easy, because it's like, you're like, I want to lose weight, but I'm scared of not eating this food. So I ignore the diet part. So I eat 100, peanut butter cups a day. And I'm going, look, if you're eating 100 peanut butter cups a day, if you just cut that to 90, you'll make progress. And I bet if you were eating 90 instead of 100, you would like it. You would spend less money. You'd start to see the progress. You might even entertain me and go to 80. And if you did 80 and you like that, dude, you might skip to 60 the next time, right? And that's oftentimes what this momentum looks like. All of a sudden, they get to 60. They're like, that was actually easy. I'm just going to go cold turkey 0 for 3 months to see if I can do it. They do that. I've actually been seeing lately all these people on LinkedIn talking about not drinking anymore. There's a lot of people who quit drinking like at the beginning of this year for January and have just stopped. And I've seen it all over the place, lots of different social circles, right? Because they went, I'm excited. They went, oh, I'm not going to never drink again. That would have been unreasonable. They went, I'm just going to not do this. I'm going to succeed at this. It felt good. And they wanted to keep doing it.
I love that. Awesome. I know that we're over our time, but I got to ask, you've been with your partners since you said 14. You must have some relationship hack that you guys have done. You can't tell me that it's always been like rainbows and butterflies. What do you got for people?
Yeah. So it's like kind of a two-part thing, right? And it applies definitely outside the relationship realm. It applies to things you want, right? So my belief in life is like, The first thing is like, what matters is what you want, right? And so sort of like if you find yourself in a situation with a relationship, significant other, friend, anything, boss, right? There's how we feel, right? Like I might feel like, let's say I feel like my boss is like screwing me over, right? And I'm like, screw them, I want to quit, right? And it's like a lot of people frame that as like, do I have, do I deserve to quit? Does it make sense to quit? But it's like, do you want the job and the money the job gives you? If you want the job, who cares how you feel about this? Let's fix it. And if you don't want the job, who cares whether you have a good reason or not? Just leave anyways. And so it's like the thing isn't the thing. What you actually want is the thing, right? So that's the first really important thing, because you need to know, do I want this to work or not? Like, because if you don't need to over validate why, right? Like I've known people with no good reason that didn't like the person, that just wasn't feeling it anymore. And it was the right thing for them to walk away. And it's like, they didn't have a reason. If they tried to logic into that, right, with their friends, like it wouldn't have worked, right? Similarly, I've had people that had a lot of reasons that you could logically say it wouldn't work, but they were committed to each other and it does work, right? And so I think it's like commitment is one. That's like, to me, and it sounds so like cheesy, but it's just, I see in, me and my partner, it's like the act, you make yourself so vulnerable to someone that I think just being really clear up front, like, this is what I want. This is, let me back up. There's another piece of this, which is make your own rules, right? So it's like me and my wife really early on, it was sort of like, look, this is us, right? Her, me, that's it, right? Everything is up to us. Everything's up for interpretation, negotiation. Like there is no predetermined set of like what that represents. And we do not let external forces like influence that in any way whatsoever, right? And so I think it's like, the way I say it is build your world. You two have a world together and you make up the rules of that. Even if it contradicts what I'm saying, go for it. If that's your thing, do it, right? But so then that commitment, and then this is like a tactical thing. And I know a lot of people actually really disagree with this, but it was something that early on I think was really important. I don't believe in like going away like angry at each other. So like when early on, like if my wife and I were like having any sort of friction, a lot of times she would be like, I want to go home. Like, I just want to, like, I want to go away. Like, I want to be away, and I always had this belief like, hey, like we should just sit here and like force ourselves to flush it out if we want to keep doing this. Like the idea is like, either we want to keep doing this, and if we do, we belong together doing it, or we don't, and it was always that, right? And so not to say we didn't ever have like time that we need to like be sitting by ourselves thinking or something, but I think it's sort of like really committing to like, if we're having a hard time, we're not going to like let that just pass. Like I'm a very I use the friction thing, like high friction purposely. Like, hey, if we're feeling friction, we're not doing the right thing. So we have to talk about it, right? We have to drive the friction even further in order to understand like where this is going to go to. Because I think a lot of people kind of spend time in like this middle ground. I don't know if that made sense, but that's definitely like, I would say the most sort of, like concretely impactful thing that we've like intentionally done.
Wow, I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing. Thanks for reconnecting. I really hope we don't take 2 years to like have another call. I also cannot wait for you guys to change your company name so that I don't mispronounce it. The worst part is looking at that company name and then finding out how it's said. And for me, thinking, how am I that dumb? How did I do that? Like,
Yeah.
what?
Well, rest assured, like 10% of people get it right. We named the business and built the entire website in like 3 hours. And so it's basically like my partner and I texting each other looking for anything that sounds like a sales company that's available as a domain. And so we were doing like lead thing, sales thing. And and so I was like, why not? And I was like, oh, CliAcquire. I'm like, that's kind of cool. And it's like definitely different. And then like immediately it's like CliAcquire. Like, I'm like, oh shit. Like my the first domains he bought, he misspelled it. So like we had 10 domains and it was CliAquire with no like second C, like for acquire, like the first C. And so basically it was just like anyways, it's one of those things where like in so many different ways it's been signaled to me that like this domain does not, what I mean? It's like God's very clearly telling me like, you need a different name, bro. And I accept.
Thank goodness it's so early on that you don't even have to call it a rebranding or a brand refresh. You can just be like, what do you mean there was a different name for this company? What are you talking about?
So this is like a random, there's not even a wisdom in this. It's just like into Kellen's weird mind kind of is, I have not in a single public place said I started a business that does X. I have not posted I'm doing this. Like I post about the acts of the things I'm doing. So my goal is like I'm gonna do the announcement when I'm either like hiring a critical position or have hit some sort of revenue number that is actually like dance around in a circle, look at me type thing, and not, I don't know, that's not really. And so the rebrand fits really well because I haven't done that announcement yet. And so like for,
Yeah.
like you said, it's like we kind of don't exist to people. And so I'll just smoothly do this. And then in the future, and now this podcast will like kind of know the inside scoop because a lot of people don't.
Well, absolutely. This is going to be a thing. Like 10 years from now, I'm going to be like, guys, I know all of it. I know it. This is the recorded history of CliAcquire. Beginning, the middle, and the end. Yes. Well, thank you, Kellen. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, hell yeah. Anytime, dude. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.